Hello friends, today we will explore how Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni's novel The Palace of Illusions gives voice to a woman who has been silenced for centuries. The novel retells the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata from the perspective of Draupadi, renamed Panjali in this version. Unlike traditional tellings that focus on her role in starting a great war, Divakaruni dives deep into her psychological and emotional struggles. Judith Herman defines trauma as an affliction of the powerless. It shatters a person's sense of self, trust, and safety. For Panjali, trauma is not a single event, but a lifetime of betrayal and silence. Her suffering begins at birth and continues through her public humiliation and beyond. What makes her trauma unique is that it is woven into the very fabric of her society. She is oppressed by systems that normalize women's suffering and deny them moral agency. This cumulative trauma affects every aspect of her existence, from how she sees herself to how she relates to others. Panjali's identity is fractured from the moment she comes into existence. She is born not from a mother's womb but from fire, summoned by her father King Draupad to avenge his insult. Her very birth is symbolic rather than personal. She is a daughter of vengeance, not love. This absence of maternal bonding introduces the first layer of psychological harm. Trauma often begins in childhood when attachment is disrupted and a child's value is measured by usefulness rather than love. Panjali is valued for what she represents, not for who she really is. Throughout the novel, Panjali is forced into roles she never chose. She is daughter, political bride, queen, pawn, and eventually widow. The most destabilizing of these roles is her forced polyandrous marriage to five brothers. She does not marry for love or with agency. She is distributed like property, her body divided among five men according to a schedule. This arrangement silences her desires and fractures her sense of self. Feminist trauma theorist Laura Brown argues that when the self is repeatedly split to serve social order, internal fragmentation becomes a survival strategy. Panjali survives by adapting to these roles but never without internal conflict. Divakaruni's first person narration allows us to see Panjali's inner world, and what we find is not confidence but contradiction. She questions her choices, yearns for forbidden love with Karna, resents her duties, and feels guilty for wanting individuality. She admits she is not the woman she imagined herself to be. She is not wise or just. This self doubt is a direct result of her traumatic experiences. The palace itself serves as a powerful symbol. Her grand magical home represents the fragile self she builds amid chaos. It is both dream and trap, security and spectacle. The palace dazzles and confuses, eventually inciting envy that leads to her greatest violation. In psychological terms, the palace can be viewed as her idealized self image, grand yet vulnerable. When the palace is destroyed, so is her illusion of control. Her relationships offer no safe haven. Though she shares complex bonds with her husbands, none fully see or understand her. Even her beloved Arjun fails her emotionally. He marries another woman without informing Panjali, showing how even her closest relationships are marked by betrayal. The most defining moment of Panjali's trauma occurs in the Kaurava court during the infamous dice game. Her husbands wager and lose her. She is dragged by her hair into the royal hall and nearly disrobed before a jeering assembly of kings, elders, and sages. In Divakaruni's telling, this event is no longer just a political turning point, it becomes the psychological crucible of Panjali's trauma. The scene lays bare the shame, helplessness, and fragmentation that define public humiliation as a form of psychic violence. What makes this scene even more harrowing is its ritualistic setting. The court is sacred, and its participants include revered elders and sages. Their silence and inaction make Panjali's disposability clear. She is not treated as a queen or an individual, but as a tool in a power struggle between men. Kethi Keruth emphasizes that trauma often overwhelms the mind's ability to process events. Panjali's narration shows this clearly. She describes becoming two women, one trembling and ashamed, the other cold and furious. This duality illustrates a classic trauma response where the mind protects itself by distancing from the body. Divakaruni's choice to render the scene in Panjali's voice is radical. In the original epic, the incident is framed as a political insult to the Pandavas. In this novel, it is emotional devastation. Panjali is not merely a trigger for war, she is a human being enduring the collapse of self before an unfeeling crowd. Her shame is not hers alone, but forced upon her. The scene also exposes the double standards of gender and morality. While male warriors debate the legality of staking a wife in a gamble, no one considers Panjali's consent or her pain. When she asks whom Yudhishthir lost first, himself or her, she asserts her moral and intellectual agency. This moment of resistance is powerful yet tragic. It shows her grasping for logic in a space where only power is respected. Even Krishna's miraculous intervention, when her sari extends endlessly, is spiritual rather than systemic. Her dignity is preserved, but her trauma is not healed. She later reflects that she was saved but not redeemed. This event continues to haunt her throughout her life. In trauma studies, such events are called central traumas, moments so profound they fragment the narrative of self and must be revisited repeatedly to make sense of them. For Panjali, the court becomes a psychic wound that never fully closes. Its legacy is war, death, and a life lived with fury. In the aftermath of her humiliation, Panjali's suffering deepens through guilt and grief. After the war is fought and countless lives are lost, including those of her 5 sons, she begins to doubt whether justice was truly achieved. She questions whether her hatred summoned the war and the deaths. Her emotional response reflects the gendered burden placed on women in patriarchal systems. They are expected to bear not just their pain, but the emotional and moral burden of others' suffering. Herman notes that in societies that do not offer women justice, suffering becomes internalized as shame or guilt. This guilt is not only self imposed but socially reinforced. Panchali is subtly reminded, even by allies, that her anger triggered the downfall of families. Her curse against the Kauravas becomes emblematic of female vengeance. While the systemic failures that allowed her humiliation are quickly forgotten, the death of her sons is not treated as a central tragedy. It is overshadowed by the larger narrative of war. Her mourning is solitary, another echo of trauma theory, which emphasizes that unresolved grief often occurs when communal acknowledgement is denied. For Panjali, revenge is not a simple emotion but a survival mechanism. After her trauma is dismissed and her body desecrated, she clings to vengeance as the only path to restore moral order. By demanding war, she exerts agency in a world where her dignity was denied. Brown suggests that for many traumatized women, rage is the last assertion of personhood in the face of erasure. Panjali's anger, though pathologized by others, becomes her moral compass. However, the revenge she demands ultimately leaves her empty. Even with victory, she experiences no peace. The price of retribution is too high. Her closing reflections reveal spiritual exhaustion. She wonders what she has won beyond a kingdom of ashes and a silence too deep to break. This disillusionment marks the beginning of emotional insight. She realizes that revenge cannot restore the life she lost, it only intensifies the void left by trauma. Panjali's story connects to other literary women across cultures. Sita from the Ramayana, Helen of Troy, Medea from Greek tragedy, and Seth from Toni Morrison's Beloved all share a common fate. Their personal pain is overshadowed by public narratives. Helen is blamed for war, reduced to her beauty, and robbed of her voice. Medea responds to betrayal with destructive rage. Seth lives with haunting guilt for killing her daughter to save her from slavery. These women are used, discarded, blamed, or silenced, but they find moments of narrative clarity and resistance. Panjali's trauma also resonates powerfully with contemporary experiences of gendered violence. Honor based violence, still prevalent in many parts of the world, punishes women for actions perceived to have dishonored families. Like Panjali, these women are reduced to emblems of honor, denied subjectivity, and blamed for violence inflicted upon them. Cyber harassment silences women by threatening their dignity and safety. Panjali's silencing in the court is a chilling precursor to the digital silencing many women endure today. Institutional betrayal occurs when systems meant to protect instead re traumatize. Panjali is betrayed not by enemies alone, but by her husband's elders and the court. This echoes the experience of women today who report sexual assault only to face disbelief or victim blaming. In both the epic and modern world, trauma is doubled first through violation and again through neglect. The Palace of Illusions is more than a feminist retelling of ancient myth. It is a nuanced psychological portrait of a woman caught in history, patriarchy, and emotional devastation. Through Panjali's voice, the novel presents a rare and intimate portrayal of mental trauma. By analyzing this work through trauma theory, we see that Panjali's suffering is not confined to isolated moments of violence. It is systematic, cumulative, and internalized. Comparisons with other literary women reveal the universality of gendered trauma. Modern parallels confirm that these wounds continue to echo in our world.